I've been married to Sarah for 7 years, and I thought we had a solid relationship. We built a life together, shared dreams, and even had plans for kids. Yet over the past few months, things started to feel off. It was subtle at first. Sarah began working late more often, claiming it was because of deadlines at the marketing firm. I supported her. After all, I wanted her to succeed. But then there were little things: her phone buzzing incessantly at odd hours, her sudden obsession with her appearance, and the way she became more secretive about her social media. I remember the night it all unraveled. I had gotten home from work early, excited to surprise her with a nice dinner. I pulled out all the stops, cooked her favorite meal, set the table with candles, and even got a bottle of wine. As I was setting the mood, I noticed her phone lying on the kitchen counter. It buzzed again, a notification lighting up the screen. Normally, I wouldn't snoop, but something inside me snapped. I picked it up, and there it was, a message from Jake, our financial advisor. At first, I thought it was just about our investments, but then curiosity got the better of me. I unlocked the phone and read the messages. They were flirty, filled with little pet names and inside jokes that made my stomach churn. I felt the air leave my lungs. It wasn't just a professional relationship. It was clear they were having an affair. I remember my heart racing and anger flooding my veins. I had to confront her, but I needed to keep my composure. When Sarah walked through the door an hour later, the aroma of the dinner I prepared didn't seem to faze her. She was wearing that new dress I bought her, and in that moment I felt the sting of betrayal even deeper. I sat her down, my palms sweating, heart pounding. I told her I knew about Jake. Her reaction was not what I expected. She laughed, brushing it off as some harmless flirting, claiming I was reading too much into it. "It's just banter," she said, waving her hand dismissively. But I saw the guilt flash across her eyes. I pressed her for the truth, and finally she confessed. It was an emotional affair, she claimed, which somehow made it feel even. Worse, the excuses flowed like water. She was lonely, she felt neglected. It all came crashing down on me. I felt like a fool for trusting her, and as her words echoed in my mind, I realized she was just trying to justify her actions. I was torn between devastation and fury. After she finished her long-winded excuses, I exploded. I told her that I couldn't believe she would betray me like that. I had trusted her with everything: my love, my finances, my future. To hear her trivialize it was infuriating. I never thought I'd see the day when the person I loved would lie to my face so effortlessly. The emotional roller coaster hit me hard. I felt shock, anger, and then an overwhelming sense of sadness. I could hardly breathe when I thought about the life we built together, the dreams I had for our future, a future that now felt like a lie. I spent sleepless nights replaying our memories, trying to understand how I missed the signs. I felt like a ghost in my own life. As I navigated through the chaos of emotions, I made a decision. I wasn't going to stay and wallow in despair. Instead, I decided to take control of my finances, my life, everything. I wanted revenge, not just for the betrayal, but to show her the consequences of her actions. I knew I had to make a move that would hit her where it hurts. It was time to take back my power. The plan started to form in my mind, and I realized that I could thrive without her. I would leave her broke, and in that, I would find my strength. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to show Sarah that she couldn't have it all. She couldn't betray me and still enjoy the life I helped create. I was ready to act, and I wouldn't look back. In the coming days, I began to plot my revenge. I would move my money, cut off her access, and leave her in the dust. I just needed to put everything into place without her suspecting anything. Little did she know, I was ready to thrive without her, and I was going to make sure she would regret every decision she made. The next few days were a whirlwind. I had to keep my composure around Sarah while plotting my next steps. I didn't want her to suspect anything. I wanted this to be a well-executed plan that would leave her reeling. I started by gathering all my financial information. I had always been the one managing our finances. Sarah thought I was keeping things simple for her benefit, but now it felt like a double-edged sword. I sat down one night with my laptop, gathering our bank statements, investment accounts, and credit card info. It was surreal seeing everything laid out in front of me. I realized how much I had put into our joint accounts. I had been so trusting, so naive. As I scrolled through transactions, I couldn't help but feel the weight of every dollar I'd earned, now tainted by betrayal. I wanted to make sure that when I moved my money, I left Sarah with nothing. I had always been the responsible one, but now I felt like a soldier preparing for battle. First, I contacted a financial advisor, not Jake, of course. I found someone reputable and discreet. I explained my situation without going into too much detail, and they helped me set up a new account in my name only. They were efficient and within a week I had easy access to my cash and investments without Sarah knowing. Each time I transferred money, I felt a rush of empowerment. I was taking control of my life again. I didn't just want to leave her broke. I wanted to make sure she realized the consequences of her actions. I could hear her excuses echoing in my head. I was lonely. I needed attention. Those were not the words of a partner. They were the rationalizations of a person who had chosen betrayal over commitment. As I moved my assets, I started to think more about my own future. I didn't want to just survive, I wanted to thrive. I had dreams of traveling, pursuing hobbies I had set aside, and perhaps even starting a new chapter in my life. I had been living in a shadow, and now it was time to step into the light. Sarah, meanwhile, was oblivious to what was happening. She continued with her late nights and phone calls, occasionally dropping hints about how hard things were at work. I would nod along, feigning support, while inside I was building this new life without her. It felt surreal, almost like living in a movie. One evening, as I was wrapping up a long day, Sarah came home in a particularly good mood. She had won some kind of award at work, and she was overflowing with excitement. I congratulated her, but underneath it all, I felt the urge to laugh. She had no idea that her life was crumbling around her. I had already started the process of dissolving our joint accounts and preparing to file for divorce. As the days turned into weeks, I made arrangements for a new apartment. I found a cozy place downtown that was perfect for a fresh start. I started to envision myself walking through the city, enjoying life again, free from the chains of betrayal. I imagined the conversations I would have with friends, sharing my story and inspiring others who found themselves in similar situations. But it wasn't just about moving out. I wanted to make a statement. Sarah needed to understand the gravity of her actions. I thought about all the times I had put her first, all the sacrifices I had made for our relationship. She had taken my trust and stomped all over it, and I was going to ensure she felt the repercussions. With everything in motion, I felt a mix of anticipation and dread. I knew that once I pulled the trigger on my plan, there would be no turning back. I was ready to face the fallout. I was prepared for the arguments, the tears, and the blame she would throw my way. But I also knew that I would walk away stronger. It was a Wednesday morning when I finally decided to execute the last part of my plan. I went to the bank, withdrew a significant amount of cash, and transferred everything else to my new account. I felt a sense of relief wash over me as I realized that I could finally stand on my own 2 feet without Sarah. I was ready for the confrontation that would follow. The moment I revealed my plan to her, I knew it would shatter her world. But honestly, she had shattered mine first. I had spent enough time feeling like a victim, and it was time to reclaim my identity. Little did Sarah know, her days of enjoying the life I had built for us were coming to an end. I was ready to unleash the storm. I felt empowered and free, and the thought of moving on excited me. It was time for her to face the consequences of her actions, and I would be right there to ensure she understood the price of betrayal. The days leading up to the confrontation were filled with a mix of anxiety and excitement. I had set the stage perfectly, and I knew it was only a matter of time before I would reveal my hand. I spent my evenings at the new apartment, decorating it with a few essentials, letting the anticipation of my fresh start wash over me like a warm tide. I even treated myself to a new couch and a small dining table, a symbol of the new life I was about to embrace. Sarah continued her routine, blissfully unaware that the ground beneath her was about to shift dramatically. I could see her excitement over her work award, and I played the supportive husband, but inside, I felt a mixture of pity and anger. I couldn't believe how she could act as if everything was fine while she was betraying the very foundation of our marriage. Finally, the day arrived. It was a Friday, and I decided to confront her when she got home from work. I wanted to catch her off guard, and I knew the shock would be more impactful after a long week. I spent the day packing in my new apartment, rehearsing what I would say. Would I be calm and collected, or would my emotions get the better of me? Either way, I was determined to make this moment count. When Sarah walked through the door that evening, she was still buzzing with excitement from her week. "You won't believe the feedback I got today," she exclaimed as she hung her coat on the rack. I barely managed to muster a smile. "Can we talk?" I said, my voice steady but firm. The moment she heard the tone, her expression shifted from excitement to curiosity. She sensed something was off. Okay, what's going on?" she asked, her brow furrowing slightly. I took a deep breath and led her to the living room, where I had set up a space that felt intimate yet serious. I wanted her to understand that this wasn't just another conversation, this was a reckoning. "Sit down," I instructed, watching as she took a seat on the couch. I followed suit, my heart racing. "I want to talk about us, about our marriage." "Of course, is everything okay?" she asked, her voice laced with a hint of nervousness. "Not really," I replied, trying to keep my voice calm. "I know about you and Jake." The words hung in the air between us, heavy and suffocating. I could see the color drain from her face as she processed what I had just said. "What do you mean?" She feigned innocence, though her eyes betrayed her. I could see the flicker of guilt as she fumbled for her words. "I mean, I saw the messages, the flirty texts. I know you've been having an affair with our financial advisor," I said, each word laced with the weight of betrayal. Sarah's expression morphed from surprise to anger. "That's ridiculous, you're just being paranoid." She shot back, trying to regain control, but I could see the cracks in her facade. "Paranoid? I have evidence, Sarah. This isn't just a figment of my imagination. You've lied to me, and now you're trying to twist this around too. Make me feel crazy." The anger began to seep through my calm exterior, and I felt the adrenaline course through my veins. She opened her mouth, searching for a defense, but words failed her. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she finally said, her voice wavering. "Jake and I have a connection, a connection." I interrupted, incredulous. "You think that justifies what you've done? You've betrayed me, our marriage, everything we built together. You think I'm supposed to just accept your excuses? You've broken my trust." The conversation escalated quickly, and soon we were locked in a verbal battle. Sarah threw out more excuses, claiming it was an emotional affair. She was lonely, she felt neglected. "We haven't been intimate in months, and it's not like you've been making an effort," she accused. "Making an effort," I shot back. "I've been here, supporting you, believing in us. It's not my fault that you couldn't keep your legs closed while you were crying to another man." The air was thick with tension as she tried to defend her actions, but I was done listening. I wasn't interested in her rationalizations anymore. I had spent far too long feeling sorry for myself and believing in a future that was never going to happen. "Sarah, I've already moved my money. I've made arrangements for a divorce. I'm not going to keep living this lie." I watched as her face blanched, the color draining as the reality of my words hit her. Her eyes widened, and she finally seemed to grasp the seriousness of the situation. "You wouldn't do that. You can't just leave me broke," she pleaded, panic rising in her voice. "Oh, but I can and I will. You made your choices, and now you're going to face the consequences." I felt a sense of liberation wash over me. I was finally taking control of my life. "What do you mean you've moved your money? Where did you put it?" she demanded, desperation creeping into her tone. "That's none of your business anymore," I replied, a newfound confidence surging through me. "I'm done supporting your lies." The confrontation was tense, but I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I was finally standing up for myself after all those months of doubt and heartbreak. I was ready to leave her in the dust, and I couldn't wait to see how she would handle the fallout of her actions. I was moving forward, and there was no turning back. In that moment, I realized that I had not only reclaimed my finances but my dignity and self-worth. I was ready to embrace my new life, and nothing would hold me back. After that explosive confrontation, The atmosphere in our home was electric with tension. Sarah was a whirlwind of emotions, shocked, angry, desperate. As she tried to process what was happening, I could see the gears turning in her mind, searching for a way to regain control, but I had already made my decision. I was done with the charade, and I was ready to close this chapter of my life. The following days were a haze of emotions for both of us. We had slipped into a strange routine, with Sarah trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy while I was busy preparing for the next steps. She would call me from work, asking if we could talk, promising she would make things right. But I had heard enough of her empty promises. I wasn't going to fall for them again. I was already in touch with a divorce lawyer, and we had scheduled our first meeting. I wanted to ensure that when the time came, I was fully prepared. I gathered all our financial documents, outlining everything we owned, and worked on a plan to make sure Sarah wouldn't have access to any of my resources. It was empowering to take control of my financial future, but it was also a reminder of how deep the betrayal cut. Each day, Sarah tried to breach the subject of our relationship, but I kept her at arm's length. I wouldn't let her back into my heart so easily. She would come home from work, trying to be affectionate, even going as far as cooking dinner to show that she was trying to change. But I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal from my mind. Every meal she prepared felt tainted. Every smile she gave felt like a manipulative ploy to win me back. One evening, as I was sorting through paperwork in the living room, Sarah sat beside me, her eyes filled with a mix of regret and frustration. "You're not even giving me a chance to explain myself," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm trying to make amends here." I closed the folder, looking directly at her. "Make amends? What does that even mean at this point? You think I can just forget about what you did? You had an affair with a man we trusted. You broke our marriage vows. No amount of cooking or attempts to be nice will fix this." Her eyes teared up and she reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Don't touch me," I said, my voice low but firm. I didn't want her pity. I wanted her to understand the gravity of her actions. She tried to change her approach, becoming more contrite. "I want to go to couples therapy. I think we can work through this if you just give me a chance," she pleaded. "Therapy won't fix the fact that you chose to sleep with someone else," I replied, my frustration boiling over. "I'm not interested in fixing anything with you." As the confrontation continued, I felt a mix of anger and sadness. I had loved this woman, and now I was watching my dreams of a future crumble before my eyes. But above everything, I felt relief. I had taken the reins of my life, and as painful as it was to confront Sarah, I knew it was necessary for my healing. The following week, I met with my lawyer, who was incredibly helpful and compassionate. She explained the steps we would need to take for an amicable divorce, hoping to avoid a drawn-out battle. I was grateful for her guidance. It made the process feel less daunting. Together, we mapped out a plan that would protect my interests and ensure that I wasn't left vulnerable. As I left the lawyer's office, I felt a sense of clarity. I was stepping into a new chapter of my life, one where I would prioritize myself and my happiness. No more second-guessing, no more doubts. I was ready to move forward, and it felt liberating. However, the more I distanced myself from Sarah, the more erratic she became. One day, she barged into the living room holding her phone. "I found out you've been talking to someone, haven't you?" she accused, her voice rising. "Talking to someone? Are you kidding me? This is rich coming from you," I shot back, incredulous at her audacity. "I know you've been seeing someone else. You're just trying to get back at me," she continued, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. "Sarah, this isn't about you or what I'm doing. You need to focus on your own actions. You destroyed our marriage," I replied, trying to remain calm, but she wouldn't let up. "I can't believe you're doing this to me. You think you can just walk away with everything." Her desperation was palpable. I could see that she was spiraling, and part of me felt bad for her. But I quickly reminded myself that this was all her doing. I needed to stay focused on my own healing and not get sucked back into the emotional chaos she was creating. As weeks passed, I moved more of my personal belongings into my new apartment, fully embracing my fresh start. I began to furnish it with items that reflected my personality, vibrant colors, artwork that inspired me, and a sense of warmth that had been absent from our shared home. I also started reconnecting with friends, many of whom I had drifted away from during our marriage. They were supportive and encouraging, and their company helped me remember who I was outside of being Sarah's husband. I found joy in simple things again, dining out, exploring the city, and rediscovering my passions. Yet, amidst this newfound freedom, I felt a shadow lingering, an unresolved sense of anger towards Sarah and the betrayal I had endured. I knew that I needed to address this before I could fully embrace my new life. I began considering the possibility of speaking with a therapist myself, someone who could help me process the emotional turmoil and guide me through the transition. As I sat in my new apartment, looking out at the city skyline, I realized that I was ready to let go of the past and reclaim my future. I didn't need Sarah to validate my worth or happiness. I was on the path to thriving, and I was determined to make it happen. Little did Sarah know, as she continued to spiral, I was already planning my next steps to ensure the finality of our separation. I wanted to make sure she would understand the consequences of her actions, and I was ready to deliver that lesson. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself grappling with an intricate mix of emotions. The initial shock of the betrayal had dulled, replaced by a simmering anger that fueled my determination to move on. I was busy building a life that was all my own, but I also knew that I needed closure with Sarah before I could fully embrace this new beginning. I had been living in my new apartment for a couple of months when I finally decided it was time to confront her one last time. I wanted to let her know that I was serious about the divorce and that her actions had irreversible consequences. I wanted her to understand that she couldn't just waltz back into my life when it suited her. I called her one afternoon asking if we could meet. "I think we need to talk about everything that's been going on," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Is this about the divorce?" she asked, her voice tinged with apprehension. "Yes, and it's important." "Can we meet at that coffee shop we used to go to?" I suggested. She hesitated for a moment, then reluctantly agreed. "Fine, I'll be there." As I arrived at the coffee shop, I felt a wave of nostalgia wash over me. This was once a place filled with laughter and love, but now it felt like the backdrop of a different life. I spotted Sarah sitting at a table, nervously fidgeting with her hands. She looked different, more haggard than I remembered, the stress weighing heavily on her. "Thanks for meeting me," I said as I sat down across from her. "Of course. I just wanted to say that I'm really sorry about everything that's happened," she began, her eyes searching mine for a hint of forgiveness. "Sorry doesn't cut it, Sarah," I replied, cutting her off. "You broke my trust. You shattered our marriage. I don't want to hear empty apologies anymore. I want to talk about the divorce and what that means for both of us." Her expression shifted from regret to frustration. "You're not even willing to consider the possibility of working on things." "I've already made my decision. I'm moving forward, and I need you to understand that. We can't go back to what we had. It's done." I felt a sense of resolve as I spoke, the conviction in my voice strengthening with each word. "But I still love you," she exclaimed, her voice rising. "Love isn't enough, Sarah. You made your choice when you decided to have an affair. Love can't fix betrayal," I shot back, surprised at the fierceness of my own words. She looked defeated, and for a moment I felt a flicker of sympathy. We had shared so much, but I quickly reminded myself of the pain she had caused me. "I'm serious about the divorce. I've already spoken to my lawyer and will be moving forward with the paperwork," I continued, trying to keep my emotions in check. "That's not fair. You can't just take everything from me," she protested, her voice breaking. "It's not about being fair, it's about facing the consequences of your choices. You had the opportunity to be honest with me, and instead, you chose deceit. I'm not going to let you manipulate me into feeling guilty for wanting to move on." There was a long pause as we both took in what was happening. The weight of the moment hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I could see the realization wash over her. This was truly the end. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she whispered, tears pooling in her eyes. It was a moment of vulnerability that I hadn't seen from her since the affair was revealed. "I know you didn't, but those were your choices, and now we have to deal with the aftermath. I can't keep pretending that everything is okay when it's not. Sarah looked down at her coffee, and for a moment I thought she might finally grasp the severity of the situation. "What do I need to do?" she finally asked, her voice small. We talked through the details of the divorce, outlining how we would split our assets and what the timeline would look like. It was a pragmatic conversation, driven by the reality of our situation. I could feel a sense of empowerment wash over me as I laid out my terms. I wasn't going to be pushed around anymore. I was reclaiming my life. After we finished discussing the logistics, I took a deep breath. This is going to be hard for both of us, but I truly believe it's for the best. I hope you can find a way to move forward. As well, I just wish things had turned out differently, she admitted, tears spilling down her cheeks. Me too, but wishing won't change anything, I replied, my heart heavy. I wanted to feel compassion for her, but I also knew I had to stay strong. As we parted ways, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. This was it. I was finally closing the door on our past. I had confronted her, established my boundaries, and laid out the reality of our situation. It was a step towards healing, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next. In the following days, I focused on moving forward. I immersed myself in work, spent time with friends, and even took up a few new hobbies. I found solace in the process of rediscovering myself outside of the confines of my marriage. I was learning to enjoy my own company again, and it felt liberating. But as I navigated this new chapter, I knew there would still be challenges ahead. The divorce process would take time, and I was preparing myself for the emotional roller coaster that often accompanied it. I had made my peace with the reality of the situation, but I also understood that closure wouldn't come overnight. As I reflected on my journey, I realized that this experience had taught me invaluable lessons about self-worth, resilience, and the importance of standing up for myself. I was stronger than I had ever believed, and I was ready to thrive in a way I never thought possible. And little did I know, the final act of my revenge was still on the horizon, waiting to unfold as I continued to reclaim my life. As the divorce proceedings moved forward, I felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. I had taken control of my life, but there were still lingering feelings, anger, sadness, and a deep sense of betrayal. I had learned to navigate these emotions, but I also knew that the process would be long and often painful. It was a journey of healing, and I was determined to see it through. The day of the divorce hearing finally arrived, and as I sat in the waiting area of the courthouse, I couldn't shake the nerves coursing through my body. This was it, the final step to closing the chapter on my marriage to Sarah. I had prepared myself for this moment, but the weight of the situation still weighed heavily on my heart. I glanced around the room, watching other couples and individuals navigating their own paths through the legal system. It was a sobering reminder that I wasn't alone in my struggles, even if it felt that way. When my name was called, I walked into the courtroom with a sense of determination. Sarah was already seated, and as I took my place beside my lawyer, she looked up at me, her expression a mixture of defiance and vulnerability. I could see that she had been crying. Her eyes were red and puffy. In that moment, a small part of me felt bad for her, but I quickly pushed it aside. I had to stay focused. The proceedings began, and as the judge reviewed our case, I felt a wave of emotions wash over me. It was surreal to hear the details of our life together laid out in such a stark manner. The judge asked questions about our assets, debts, and the specifics of our separation. I felt a sense of finality as I recounted the decisions I had made regarding our finances and the steps I had taken to ensure my independence. When it was time for Sarah to speak, I braced myself. "I just want to say that I regret everything that happened," she began, her voice shaky. "I never meant to hurt him or destroy our marriage." I could see the judge's gaze shift toward me as I maintained my composure. I had heard these words before, empty apologies that had lost their weight a long time ago. My heart hardened as she continued. "I'm just asking for the chance to start over, to make things right," she pleaded, her voice rising, but I knew better. "Your actions have consequences, Sarah," I said, my voice steady. "You made your choices, and now we both have to face the reality of those decisions." The judge listened attentively, and I could see the understanding in her eyes. She turned to address both of us, reminding us of the importance of honesty and integrity in relationships. As she finalized the terms of our divorce, I felt a sense of liberation wash over me. I was free. Free from the lies, free from the betrayal, and free to reclaim my life. When it was all said and done, as I walked out of the courtroom, I felt light. I had taken the necessary steps to rebuild my life, and I was finally ready to embrace my future. The weight of my past had been lifted, and I felt a renewed sense of purpose. In the weeks that followed, I continued to focus on myself. I immersed myself in activities that brought me joy, traveling, trying new hobbies, and spending time with friends who had supported me throughout the ordeal. I even started dating again. It was daunting, but it felt invigorating to put myself out there. I was discovering who I was outside of my marriage, and it felt exhilarating. I did run into Sarah a few times after the divorce was finalized, usually in passing. She seemed different, more subdued, perhaps even humbled. I couldn't help but feel a sense of bittersweet satisfaction. I had taken control of my life, and I had emerged stronger than I had ever been. One day, as I was enjoying coffee with friends at a cafe, I spotted her sitting alone at a nearby table, staring into her cup. I felt a mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to approach her to see how she was doing, but I quickly reminded myself that this was a chapter I had closed. In that moment, I realized I was no longer defined by my relationship with Sarah. I had learned valuable lessons about love, trust, and the importance of self-respect. I understood that I deserved happiness and fulfillment, and I was determined to pursue that. As I left the cafe, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. I was ready to embrace whatever life had in store. I was thriving, building a new life on my own terms, and I was excited about the possibilities ahead. The journey had been difficult, with moments of heartache and anger. But through it all, I had learned to stand up for myself and take control of my destiny. I was not just surviving, I was thriving, and I was more than ready to move forward into a bright future.